What's going on, everybody? Ratchet is back for another video, and today we're going to be working on the Audi S3. As the title says, we're going to be installing a huge intercooler right here, which we'll get into unboxing in a little bit. But yeah, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So the first thing, as you can see, my bumper is off. I do, if you are following the channel, I have an RS3 style conversion kit. You will have to remove this for the process. Ours is off just because I had to get it repainted. So if you're looking for a tutorial on how to do that, I'll link up a video that we pretty much put the RS3 style grill in, and then it shows you how to do step by step to remove the bumper. So I went with the ECS Tuning just because we're partnered up with ECS Tuning. Thank you, Dave, for hooking us up all the time. But there are a ton of brands out there. This one's a direct fit. I know CTS Turbo and some other ones you have to cut some things. But yeah, no, this thing, I haven't even opened it up yet. I don't want to damage the fin, so I'm just going to do one side until we're ready to put it up. But it's all aluminum. Damn, this thing's a unit, man. Got some weight to it, but the real reason we're doing this, it does unlock some horsepower, but these cars, the GTIs, the A3s, pretty much everything, they acquire so much heat soak in this. So this is going to really free up that heat soak and just let it breathe a lot better and perform really a lot better. So I'm going to put that in here, and we're just going to jump right into the install. So like I mentioned, we're just going to jump right into this. We're going to do a step-by-step tutorial, and this will probably be the go-to install video on YouTube, because there's a bunch for the GTI and the Golf Rs, but it's actually, a lot of people classify in the title for the same. It's really not. There's a lot of different procedures. Of course, when it comes to removing the bumper, it's different on the GTI and the Golf R compared to the A3 and S3. So this one's going to be more catered to the A3 and the S3s. And this is pre-facelift, as you can tell by the lights. It should be very similar for the post-facelift. But first thing you're going to do is remove the bumper, and we already did that. I explained in the beginning. And then the second thing, which we're going to jump right into now, you could kind of go in multiple steps, but we're going to take off the headlights because you're going to need to remove that, because essentially what you want to do, this is the condenser here, and behind it, if you could see, is the intercooler, and then it goes to the radiator and the radiator fan assembly. That all comes off when we remove this whole bash bar, radiator fan assembly, condenser assembly, intercooler assembly out. So in order to do that, let's take the headlights off, and it's actually 3 bolts that are holding it in, and they're T30s. Alright, so in order to get the headlight out, there's actually 4 bolts. There's one right here. I already started taking that one out. There's one right there. And then there's one right here. And then the last one is actually underneath it. See if I could see that one in there. And those are all T30, so we're going to remove those. But before I do that, I do want to remove the wire harness that's powering up these headlights. Just a side note, these are very expensive, so you want to be careful not to drop them because they're not cheap. Alright, so we're going to remove this. There's a little tab here that you push down and then pull out, and that will just remove that. And I don't think that's connected to it. Okay. So we'll go ahead and remove these T30s. All 4 of them. Might need an extension for them. We're using our 1/4 inch T30 with the Milwaukee. I'll link this down below because this is a really cool gadget to have. Very helpful. So now we got a lot of play. And then we'll just have to get that bottom one first. Okay, and they are all different sizes, so just keep in mind which went where. We just got the headlight out right here. We'll set this aside for right now until we get it in the car and put some blankets down. But I do want to mention, just to make it easier to get that headlight out, there's a little bumper bracket here that's pretty much just held in there, and the headlight kind of gets clipped up on this. So there's one T30, which is right under here. You just remove that. This whole bumper piece will just pop off, and it'll just make life a little bit easier. So that's it. And then just keep in mind, when you're removing the headlight, it has a little ventilation tube that you just pull that out with it. You don't want to rip it. So we'll go ahead and do the passenger side off camera, and then we'll start with the next step. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and pretty much remove this top little piece that just kind of channels the air for the intake. You might actually have to remove the intake itself, depending on your setup. There's that. And there's one here and one here, and those are all T15s. Get it out without removing the whole intake. That'd be lovely. There we go. Perfect. And we'll just kind of set that up here. I am going to throw these bolts back in here. Just a good habit to put them so you don't have just miscellaneous bolts laying around. Alright, so now what we're going to do is pretty much kind of go around and disconnect all the sensors and the wiring that are connected to this whole radiator, intercooler, condenser, radiator fan assembly. I'm going to stop saying it all, but that's what it is. I'm just going to call it the intercooler support bracket. So we're going to pretty much disconnect any wires that are going to it. So this, obviously, we're going to have to disconnect for the horns. There's some collision sensors. There's some ambient air temperatures. There's a lot. So it's a lot to list off, but we'll go through them all and just remove them. And they're all going to be the same style clip. For example, we'll do this one here, where you kind of push in, hear that pop, and just slide out. And we'll set that to the side. We'll go ahead and do this one over here. There we go. And we'll have to pop it out of here with the panel popper, because that's going to come out with it. Maybe, maybe not. It might come out with the whole assembly. I think I'm going to keep it in there. But just kind of panel pop it out right there. Alright, and then we'll start diving in and finding the other ones. So as you just saw, I removed some of them, but this one I want to really mention off on camera is, see this yellow one right here? So this yellow connector is actually a collision sensor, so if you're ever in a front end collision, it will kind of help deploy the airbags and just, you know, tell the computers, hey, I'm hit, kind of thing. So you want to be extremely careful. You want to remove that. Otherwise, if you leave that on the support and you pull the support off and you rip that, you're pretty much in for a world of pain. So definitely take your time with this. Make sure when you're removing this, just follow our tutorial, really. It will show you how to remove every single one. But this one is a little different clip than the rest. It has a red safety clip that you have to slide down, and then you push down and pull out. Alright, so now that we got the intake, I guess you call it the runner, out of the way, we're going to have to remove the hood latches and kind of set them aside. As you saw on that side, I removed the sensor. There's one more on this side. I'm going to remove that right now. And then, I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera, but there is two T30 bolts, or 10 millimeters, depending on how you want to remove them, that hold that into the little intake support, or not intake support, radiator support. So we're going to take our T30 and just kind of remove those. Alright, just like that. Get that out of the way. Now that I loosened that whole thing up, and we're just going to have to pull that through and out. There is a little push clip that's holding the sensor in. You just have to kind of pop that out with the panel popper. And we're just going to set that to the side there. And then essentially you just need to free up all this wire and everything so you could just tuck it to the side. So we'll go to this side here and do the same exact thing. And they're pretty long, but they come out quick. Bam. So we'll have to pop off that sensor one more time. Oh. Alright, so we got this side out. Now, last thing to do to get that out of the way is to just slide this whole box back, take it out of these little channels, and we'll set it to the side over here. So that pretty much got everything from the top out of the way. We're going to make our way under the car and disconnect a couple more connectors, and then it's time to start grooving and get the whole bash bar out of the way, and then the whole assembly. So as you just saw, we removed the belly pan over there. We just set that aside. Now we're going to have to remove the hoses that are connecting to the intercooler from the bottom, the ports. And they're going to be either, this one's a flathead or 7mm. We're just going to go ahead and use a 7mm. Crank that one loose. And I'll crank this one loose. Shout out to EQT. Alright, so now that we got those both loose, we're going to have to break the seal. Usually it's pretty hard. You could use like a hose pick. But since we did this maybe about a couple months ago, it should be fairly easy for this side. But this OEM one over here is going to be a little more difficult. As you can see, yep, it's going to be a struggle. So we're going to loosen this up just a tad bit more. We're going to have to break that seal that it made. And pretty much by doing that, you could use a flathead, hose pick, or this, for example, and you just got to get between it and kind of just pry it up around it to break it. And don't be alarmed if any oil comes out. It's natural. If it's a lot of oil, then be alarmed. But a little bit, not a big deal. So we got those out of the way, and now I actually don't think there's any other sensors down low. I was thinking of the one for the bumper, but we already got that off. But now it's pretty much just going to take off the 17mm up top, the bash bar, and this whole assembly should come out. Alright, so now the last step is really just removing the 4 bolts. They're actually 16mm, not 17mm, on each side. And then that whole thing is going to be loose, as you can see right here. Even the radiator support itself. I do have the radiator support bolted up here with a T30 and a T30, but you don't want to let all the weight on that. I feel like this thing could bend. It's only cheap aluminum. Not cheap, but it's aluminum. So we're going to actually kind of pick it up and lift it up on the chair. And we have these little blocks for extra support, but keep 1/16 on each side before you take all of them off, otherwise it's just going to drop to the ground. It's not the heaviest thing in the world, but it is awkward, so make sure you have definitely 2 sets of hands. And it's really just going to go for it. So we're going to sit you guys on a time lapse. We're going to remove those last 2 bolts and kind of, actually before I get to that, before we get those 2 bolts off, I want you to come over here. This is my makeshift ghetto little thing here for the washer fluid. But so this is the controversy part I was telling you guys in the beginning, that most people suggest leaving the AC condenser lines in and then just rotating the whole unit this way, which is the way I'm going to do. I've seen a couple people on YouTube, the 2 other videos where they disconnect it and then you got to refill it with Freon and whatnot, but it's kind of dangerous to get Freon into the atmosphere. 1, it's illegal, and 2, it's just another step that you don't have to do, and it does, you know, pull the oxygen out of the area that it's in, so it could, if you inhale it, remove the oxygen from your lungs, and you don't want to do that. So I'm going to leave those in, along with ECS, CTS Turbo, and a bunch of other companies. They say to leave them in, just kind of pivot the whole unit to the side, and that's the way we're going to do it. So this is definitely a cheaper way, because you don't have to get a new Freon or take it to the shop and get it refilled, and a safer way. So we're going to do that now. We're going to set you up on the time lapse and get cracking. Alright, so before we actually remove those, you're going to have to disconnect this little clip, I guess maybe even like a bracket, which is holding this whole assembly to everything else. And in order to get this assembly off separate, you have to do that. So the best way we found to do it, we went ahead and did the passenger side off camera, is stick a flathead in here, and then take either a flathead or 2 pry bars or whatever you got, and kind of pry down on it, because you just need it to clear the lip. It's really hard to explain it because it's easier done than said. So as you can see, we were struggling. This condenser was just getting hung up right down here on the intercooler, and then this little part from the intercooler was getting hung up in that little groove right there on the support bracket. But as you can see, there is a lot of play in these AC lines that go to the condenser, so you really don't have to unplug them. You can just set that to the side. Now it's pretty much time to take off the intercooler, put the new one on, swap over these things, which were kind of a bitch too. And then there was one more collision sensor on this side that I forgot to show, but got that out of the way. So now we're just going to disconnect it from the radiator and the radiator fan assembly. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and remove the intercooler. There's a tab right here. We're going to push down on that, slide this thing past it. Come on, there we go. And then we'll slide that up, and I'll get that side out. We'll go to this side. So we just went ahead and got that side off. Now we're just going to have to lift the radiator out, and bam. Look how tiny that thing is. Holy shit. Compared to that other one, you guys will see the difference in a second. Hopefully the camera shows justice, but while we're in here, we might as well just clean the leaves up. We'll vacuum it or whatever after. Alright, so as you can see, the new one's all aluminum, and it seems to have a little bit more surface area, but it definitely is thicker on the top. You gotta think the intercooler goes to like there. So you got almost 2 inches here, and this is probably like 1.5 inches. But I'm not sure the whole specs. I'll link everything down below. The ECS did like a testing on what's the difference between this one and that, and it's pretty drastic. So I don't want to get technical because I don't know the terminology properly. But we're gonna go ahead and get these things onto there and start reassembling it, which is gonna be probably a nightmare, but we'll get it done. reinstalling everything was kind of difficult. There was a lot of finessing, so we didn't really film it. We time-lapsed a little bit of it, but we turned it off because it took about 30 minutes to do. Pretty much, you just did the reverse procedure of how everything was done. We snapped these back into place. The intercooler, you had to push forward towards the front of the car, and then the condenser towards the back of the car and slide it in. It's really hard to explain, but it's just really fool with it, and you'll eventually get it. But like I said, it's pretty much just a reverse procedure. Now we're going to go ahead and line everything back up top. Go ahead and tighten all the hoses, all the connectors, and pretty much the home stretch. So we don't really need to film that. We'll show you the finished product once we're done. Alright guys, so that's going to wrap up today's video. We hope you enjoyed. This was not the easiest of installs. We hopefully made it somewhat accessible for you guys to do at home. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns or anything, just drop them down below. We'll be sure to help. And it's also, if you follow us on Instagram, we answer there a lot quicker than on YouTube. But we'll help you out along the way. This was mainly the tutorial for the A3 and S3, like I said in the beginning. It's similar to the GTI and the Golf R, but not at the same time. So that's pretty much going to sum that up. And if you really want to see how much this is worth it, we'll link down below. ECS did a bunch of dyno runs and compared to the stock one and the one we just installed to see the results and see how much performance you do gain out of this and the lower IATs and stuff like that. But until next time, we're out. Peace.